there are numerous studies that show that estradiol is breast protective, and so is progesterone. And because I swear more than once a month, someone says, well, my friend said, or my doctor said that this would cause me to have breast cancer. And I say the same thing. Here's the literature. You read it. You decide.
Welcome to Biohacking with Brittany, where women optimize. I'm your host, Brittany Ford, holistic nutritionist and wellness entrepreneur, and I'm here to help you live in alignment with your body and nature. This podcast blends cutting-edge science with soul-led strategies to support you through every phase of womanhood, from fertility to longevity and everything in between. Each week, we dive into functional medicine, women's health, holistic healing, and biohacking tools that empower you to take control of your wellness journey. Let's redefine what it means to thrive together. Welcome back to the show, everybody. Thank you for listening. Today, I got to sit down with Dr. Julian Gershon, and we talked all about aging and longevity. And it was a really cool episode, actually. We walked through what aging can look like in your 30s, 40s, 50s, and beyond for women, and how to actually optimize all of those decades through different regenerative medicine approaches, things like PRP, stem cells, peptides, all sorts of things like that. So it was a really cool episode because we really got to dive into specific periods of time and how women can optimize those, or kind of like add in very specific protocols that can really take your health to the next level, which I loved. So I learned a lot from this episode, and Dr. Julian was just brilliant to have on. I can see why so many people turn to him for their own longevity. And I think you are going to get a lot out of this episode. Before we dive in, a shout out to Biooptimizers. They are honestly one of my favorite supplement brands. I use their magnesium. I use their probiotics, their digestive enzymes. I'm just thinking of like the massive bin of Biooptimizer supplements I actually have in my pantry that my little son will take out and shake because he likes the noise and likes to play with them. So they're my go-to. Literally been using them for years. Highly suggest checking them out. If you are struggling with being, and I'm laughing because this is me very often, overworked, overwhelmed, irritated, and not sleeping well, magnesium can be super helpful for that and super calming. Magnesium is actually associated with over 300 processes in our body. And most people are deficient in magnesium today. And that is largely due to our poor quality of food, which is largely due to our poor quality of soil. So bringing that all back, if we supplement with magnesium, we can really up those levels and help us in that way. And we can feel better, show up better for ourselves and our families and our work and all of the things that we want to accomplish in life, which I love. I also love their digestive enzymes. I take them with a lot of my meals. They help you absorb more of your protein. We all know protein is having its little minute right now. Super popular, super trendy. So if you want to absorb more of the protein that you're eating, you got to add in digestive enzymes. So check out Biooptimizers. Use my discount code BiohackingBrittany. Everything's linked in the show notes and on my website. And enjoy this podcast episode, and I will catch you soon for another one. Today, we are going deep into regenerative medicine with Dr. Julian Gershon, a triple board certified physician in family medicine, sports medicine, and anti-aging and regenerative medicine, which is just incredible. He's also the founder of the Aspen Institute for Anti-Aging and Regenerative Medicine, a destination for high-performing healing and personalized longevity care. We're going to dive into a bunch of different things: PRP, stem cell therapy, peptides, hormones, everything like that. So, Dr. Julian, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. Thanks, Brittany. I'm real excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you. I want to kind of start off with you personally and your background. How did you get into a place where you thought, I want to focus on regenerative medicine and longevity? Like, what drew you to that?
Well, I guess when I became an aging athlete, I didn't really feel bad, but it made sense to me. My background, sports medicine. I've been Division I college team physician for 20 years at the University of North Texas before I moved to Aspen. I've been at multiple different Olympic teams. I've been in Chile skiing with the U.S. freestyle team and covering USA Judo. So did a lot of fun things. And I had some colleagues of mine, and I talk about it in my book in the beginning, my buddy Bob Goldman, who founded the American Academy of Anti-Aging and Regenerative Medicine. I know there are a lot of Canadian physicians and providers that go to these meetings that we have in Las Vegas every December with literally tens of thousands of participants there. And I would say when I first heard about it, I wasn't a fan. And I was at a board meeting for our sports medicine academy. I'm like, where's Bob? Well, he's doing some anti-aging thing. And he's lost his mind. Yeah. But guess what? He was, ahead of his time. And so in about 2000, I went to the first conference. It made sense to me. And as I said, I was 50 then. I was an aging athlete, and I didn't feel bad. I grew up ski racing in northern Michigan and on ice in the snow, like most good Canadians. And I didn't feel bad, but it all made sense to me that I wanted to optimize performance. That's what I was about in sports medicine, helping my patients recover and do their best, live their best, feel their best. And then as I began studying and starting to take testosterone, DHEA, vitamins, nutrients, focusing on, all the different aspects that we now know are so important from a longevity standpoint, I felt better. It made sense. And I wanted to start sharing that with people that I cared for and that I love, friends, family, and my clients. And that's what also led me to write the book, Beyond the Fountain of Youth. And I tried to do it in as much of a conversational format as possible so that it wouldn't be over the top of anyone's head, that, we could really understand it, talk about all of the concepts and then realities of here are the simple things that we can do to feel better every day, perform our best as we get older, still maintain the chemistry and biochemistry of a 20-year-old. Why wouldn't? That's our goal, is to reset things to where they were in our 20s, because as most of us will acknowledge that, I ask people all the time, when you fill out this checklist and tell me your symptoms, mild, moderate, severe, how are you today compared to where you were at 25? It's like, well, I don't know. I don't remember. I said, well, exactly. Everything worked. You didn't have complaints. You felt great. You worked all day. You partied at night. You worked hard. You weren't ready for the couch at 4:00. Everything was optimal because that's when your hormones were out.
Right. Wow. Yeah, I can definitely understand that. I'm not too far away from 25, but I have had a baby and he's 10 months old. And I definitely have days where I'm like, I just want to be on the couch. And yeah.
Yeah, it's really funny because particularly with women, and I love helping women regain their vitality, because now, you wanted to be a mom, you've got 1, 2, 3, whatever, however many kids, a husband that you treasure or you wouldn't be there. And you want to feel your best, and it gets tough.
Yeah.
We used to think that, well, yeah, okay, menopause. Everyone knows that at menopause, things crash and you feel bad. But that's for old women, Oh, well, is it? Not really. And so, yes, around 50-ish, sometimes sooner, sometimes later, women lose estradiol, and that's when menopause happens. But I can't tell you how many women in their 30s and some in their 20s that I have that after childbirth, it's just kind of like, who forgot to reset the thermostat? Something changed. And so I see changes in testosterone levels. Women say, I just can't lose this insulation around my belly, or I'm working out, but I'm not gaining muscle mass, or I'm just sore. My recovery time's longer. And energy levels, libido. I love my husband, but you know what? Don't touch me tonight. Well, that's all related to testosterone. Testosterone is extremely important for muscle mass, body composition, mental focus, brain health, lipid metabolism, glucose metabolism, everything. And so those levels decline sometimes very early on after childbirth. Progesterone levels. Well, I just don't sleep the same. Well, guess what? Your progesterone is that of a 50 or 60-year-old, and so we use sometimes very small amounts of progesterone in younger women to help, certainly with PMS symptoms, cramping, moody, bitchy, bloaty, all those unpleasant
Mhm.
can happen when you don't have enough progesterone. And so, unfortunately, routine medical care and many well-meaning providers, you're just not trained in that area. You say, well, you're 30, you're fine, or your hormone, your levels are fine. Well, are they optimal? Unfortunately, most of them don't know how to optimize hormones and what that really means. And so you want to seek out someone that's, a member of the American Academy of Anti-Aging and Regenerative Medicine, or has gone through WorldLink Medical, or companies like Avexius that train pellet therapy, worldwide for physicians. Or look at our website and we'll, send us a note. We'll do a telemedicine visit and try to give you some advice on things. But there really is interesting because, that wasn't my understanding of things when I started doing this. I don't want to be selfish, but I wanted to feel my best.
Yeah.
And then as I studied and learned more, it just was, hey, this is something that I have to share. This is for everyone. And it's not just about menopause. I mean, we have lots of data on the benefits of natural bioidentical hormone therapy for women, perimenopausal, postmenopausal. It's a big deal. The number one killer of women over 50 is a heart attack. Well, why is that? Well, when you lose estradiol, your arteries get stiff and rigid, which is the last thing you want. Not to mention that lipid metabolism changes, glucose metabolism, everything kind of, as those hormone levels decline, inflammation markers increase. And we call inflammation what? The silent killer. Well, who wants more of the silent killer hanging around their house? Nobody. And so, it becomes very important to use small amounts of hormones, sometimes decades before menopause.
Right. Right. Yeah, that was one of the things that I did want to ask you about, is what your recommendations would be for women in their 30s, 40s, and 50s, because obviously it would be different. And from the sounds of it, you're saying that, especially if you're a mom, low testosterone and even low progesterone seem like very common things that come up in your practice. But for the women in their 30s, maybe if they're not moms, what would you say they should be doing really to optimize their aging in that decade?
Well, I still see women in their 30s that aren't moms that have issues with both progesterone and testosterone. So it's not, we don't just blame it all on your kids. Sometimes it's convenient, but we don't, and so, there are a lot of environmental factors that are affecting hormone levels in men and women across the board, from the microplastics, from estrogenic compounds in water bottles to, as I said, the microplastics, to glyphosate and toxins and bad food choices, exercise, sleep. I mean, there's so many things that you understand. And then the nutrients that are in the foods, they're not the same. Foods now are mostly grown in nutrient poor soils. And so that can affect it as well. It's real important, if you're still menstruating, having cycles and periods, that we do testing not just once at any time in the cycle, but the 18th to the 20th day of your cycle after the new cycle. So day one is the first day you stop spotting or bleeding. And so on days 18 to 20, that's when your progesterone peaks. And estradiol will also be up at that time, but that's when you should have your blood tested to see where your progesterone levels are, because it may not be zero like it will be in perimenopause and menopause, but let's say it's 1 or 2. And at that peak, it's not 10 or 20, it's 1 or 2. Well, if with PMS symptoms, bad cramps, heavy periods, bad feelings that happen around that time of the cycle, when then progesterone drops to nearly zero after that 20th day, and then you have a cycle, we can affect that a lot by very small amounts of progesterone, either just during that time of the month. Sometimes we'll use, let's say, 25 or 50 milligrams for the first 2 weeks, and then increase it for 5 to 7 days and then decrease again. So it's kind of an art of fine tuning to help women feel their best. And so it does not have to be related to childbirth. And I see, frequently see women that they just don't feel right. It's like, what's going on? I can't lose this weight. I'm still working out 3 to 5 days a week. And so, the key is to test all the levels.
Yeah. Yeah. And do you recommend the Dutch test for something like that people can do at home? I'm sure you know of the Dutch test, or
I don't use that lab a lot. I find I don't like saliva testing, because I like serum blood testing, because I have found, and 10 or 15 years ago, I was trying to use saliva testing, and it just was not as reliable. It was more variable. I tested myself at different times and got different numbers when I hadn't changed anything. So I know that they are proud of their test and that a lot of people utilize it. And if that's what you do, fine. Just compare apples with apples. I like using serum blood testing because it doesn't tend to fluctuate as much as dependent on how much hormone's in my saliva. I want to know how much is in my tissues. And so that's why I focus on serum blood testing for hormone levels.
Yeah. Is it a blood test just a snapshot as well, though? Like, wouldn't the levels change as well?
Well, yes. Yes and no. They don't, they change throughout the day and throughout the week.
Yeah.
But in general, they're going to be their highest during that time, the 18th to the 20th day of a woman's cycle. The progesterone will be its highest. Testosterone fluctuates a little, but once I find it low, it's just always low. You're just not making enough. And
Yeah. Do you ever see women struggle with high testosterone?
Rarely. Yeah. Very, very little. I almost never see a woman that has too much.
Okay. But do you see men having too much?
Never.
Never, really? So it's just both, everyone, if they're struggling with it, it's too low.
It's always too low. And it's, I see guys, I would say what we've learned is having optimal levels or biochemistry, or everything works its best, right?
Yeah.
So muscle mass, body composition, biochemistry works its best when they're optimal. And so if I see a guy that's 400, for instance, my testosterone, I think, was around 500. So what's the scale? Oh, somebody, a medical director at the lab, arbitrarily says 280 to 1100.
Yeah.
So if you go see your family physician, and for man, and it's 450, you're fine. You're in the optimal range. Well, I always say, and I like to know, what do they do for a living? And most guys are working hard and doing things. I said, do you run your business at 40%? I said, well, no. What do you mean? Well, you're in the 40th percentile. Wouldn't you rather be at 90 or 100%? Well, yeah, that makes sense. And that's the truth. When we correct those levels, and the numbers for women, for men, I want a testosterone of 1,000 and a free testosterone in the 20s. That's really all that matters, is how much is not bound to protein. So we must measure free and total testosterone. If someone comes in and I only have a total, well, it's probably not more than 2%, 1 to 2% of the total. So if they're at 800, you do the math. And so, for women, it's a much smaller number. I want the free testosterone to be between 2 and 4.
Ever snap at your partner over something small? and then wonder, why did that bother me so much? Or maybe you're waking up groggy, craving sugar, breaking out, or feeling just off in your body, like your hormones are whispering or yelling that something is out of balance. If any of this sounds familiar to you, you are not alone. These are signs your body is calling out for support, and magnesium might be the missing piece. Magnesium is one of those non-negotiable minerals, especially for women. It plays a critical role in hormone regulation, stress response, blood sugar balance, sleep, and even skin and muscle function. But here's the problem. Most of us are deficient, especially during high stress seasons. Hello, modern life, motherhood, and go, go, go careers. Food alone often isn't enough. So that's why I take Magnesium Breakthrough by Biooptimizers every single night. It's the only formula I found that includes all 8 forms of magnesium, including magnesium orotate, which specifically supports metabolic and hormonal health. I love it because it helps with deep restorative sleep, stress relief, and nervous system regulation, better digestion and fewer cravings, and supports my body through every hormonal phase, from luteal to postpartum. This is your permission slip to slow down and nourish yourself at the cellular level. Go to biooptimizers.com/biohackingbrittany and use code biohackingbrittany for 10% off. Even better, subscribe and you'll never miss a month. Plus, you'll unlock deeper discounts and free gifts as well. Trust me, your body, your mood, and your hormones will thank you.
But there's a hormone floating around in our bodies called SHBG, sex hormone binding globulin. And it seems to have a mind of its own. It's very difficult to lower it or raise it. It just kind of is what it is. Actually, a high carb diet can lower SHBG, but I don't think I've ever advised anyone to eat a high carb diet. So,
Yeah.
The period. And so, for a woman, that means maybe 75 to 150 or 200, whatever the number is. The total is actually not relevant. It's what is the free testosterone. And
Yeah.
so, those are things I deal with all day, every day, and it's just second nature. But, there's a reason that we do that. And that is because we perform better as a machine when we're in those ranges.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. When you have low testosterone, it's like you're not as motivated. You don't want to work out. You're sluggish. It's not helpful for anything at all.
Exactly.
Yeah. Going back to kind of the woman's life cycle. So women in their 40s, would you kind of recommend the same thing here? Potentially dabbling with some bioidentical hormones? Or is there something more in that decade that you think women should ideally be doing?
Well, I think everyone should be eating healthy, doing a high protein, low carb to very minimal carb type diet. I think sugar's the devil, and it's just, we need to stay away from sugar, exercise, good quality sleep. And then, it's nice to have a glass of wine in the evening. And we know from the blue zones that those people drink a little red wine every day, but they're not slamming tequila shots, and they're not, they're not out till 3 a.m. You need diet, exercise, sleep, all the things we know, and then replacing natural nutrients, vitamins, CoQ10. There's a number of things that are.
Yeah.
Then as we age, we start losing NAD. NAD is the most important coenzyme in our body. It declines rapidly with age. It's actually even hard to test. But there's a lot of good supplements for NAD. I do NAD infusions in the office. Numerous things that can be done. So I do think, though, that that's the time that it gets really tough, because in that time period before menopause, when 1 month the levels are high, the next month they're down. It's like a sawtooth. It's up and it's down, and it's up and it's down. Women are pretty miserable when they're starting to get near perimenopause, and so what we do then is use small amounts to help raise the baseline so that you don't have that trough. You're still going to have times when it could be a little bit high. And so we have to approach it carefully and not rush and use too much of anything, but it's definitely important that it's properly balanced.
Yeah. 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 No, that makes sense. It's almost like anything you would do to be healthy in general would obviously help with aging and longevity in those decades. From lifestyle to nutrition to supplements. And then some of these extra things that you're saying, like NAD or the hormones, I think are like kind of the next tier. But, I'm sure you agree with this, is like the low hanging fruit really has to be your lifestyle and your nutrition, because if you add in like random hormones, but you're eating junk food every night, like it's really not going to do much for you.
Absolutely. And well, I wouldn't say it's not going to do as much, but you won't see the benefits. You
Yeah.
have to stop, abusing yourself. We take things for granted when we're younger and we do a lot of stupid things.
Mm.
But there comes a time when it's like, all right, all this stuff my mom used to tell me, this is important. Maybe she was right. It is diet and exercise. And,
Yeah.
we cut back on the things that aren't the best, not overindulging with alcohol. It's certainly not smoking or using recreational drugs. And we don't have to go there today. Obviously I live in Aspen, Colorado, so people do lots of crazy things here, but they're much more health conscious than, I think the state
Mhm.
of it more than, certain areas of the country. And so it's very important to have
Yeah.
the right approach to everything you can. But then there's a time when it's like, okay, I get it. There's something else I need to learn about it. And that's where the testing comes in.
Yeah.
We do telomere testing, DNA methylation, micronutrient testing,
Cool.
fit gut testing. Be shocked how many people really have sensitivities. I won't call it allergies. We screen for, let's say, 176 different foods, and they're really not allergens. It's things that create inflammation that we react to negatively. And there's some really good supplements. I have one on my website. I just call it Gut Health, but it has a number of botanicals along with 3 grams of glutamine in it, which is almost
Nice.
curative for leaky gut syndrome.
Yeah.
And so, those are things that sometimes it is more than just what we're eating. So, you
Yeah.
may be eating the wrong things. I tested 4+ to eggplant. Well, I don't have it often, but I love eggplant. I love eggplant parmesan, but it's maybe not the best choice now.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Yeah. I mean, I've done quite a lot of testing myself, and it's very helpful. And I've uncovered things that made sense when I linked them to the symptoms that I was dealing with. And I would have never figured out that that was something that was going on without testing my microbiome or even understanding my DNA and like how I'm more susceptible to issues with methylation and things like that. So there is a lot to be said about testing for sure. I'm curious as well about the 50s and the 60s for women, with the average age of menopause being 51 in the US. Once women have kind of gone through menopause, obviously there's no more fluctuation of hormones throughout their cycle. There is no more cycle. So, how can you optimize that time for longevity and aging when the hormones are just completely different?
Well, it's very simple. It needs to match where you were at 25 or 30. And so we supplement estrogen, not estrogen. We don't use synthetic hormones. Estradiol, progesterone, not progestin, which is made from horse's urine, and testosterone,
Hmm.
DHEA, vitamin D, all the micronutrients. But it's absolutely essential. And so women will say, well, how long do I have to do this? I say, well, I don't know. How long do you want to feel good? And
Yeah.
literally, it's a big deal. You're going to commit to do this for the rest of your life. Why not? We know that the longevity factors are there. Lower risk of breast cancer, lower risk of heart disease, stroke, Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's is a big deal. Women, unfortunately, suffer from Alzheimer's more than men, and we can change that trend by replacing estradiol and natural hormones much earlier and maintaining that. And not to mention osteoporosis. I have some women pushing 80 that have been with me for more than a decade. Not one of them has osteoporosis. I
Wow.
hate the biphosphonates because the risk of a hip fracture is higher taking the medicine that is supposed to help osteoporosis. It actually can slow down bone loss, but it doesn't rebuild bone. Anyways, I hate the biphosphonates, and I don't have a single woman on my program that has osteoporosis.
Mm.
And everyone
So,
else does.
so are the women who are postmenopausal who are coming to you and you're putting on to hormones, is it the same amount of hormones every day? Or do you try to mimic the cycle that was there when they were 25?
No, it's pretty much the same every day,
Okay.
and which makes it even easier.
Yes.
During perimenopause, I will mimic progesterone. Usually, as I said, raising the baseline with estradiol. There's a range that we like to keep it there and keep it there all the time. You
Yeah.
know, and so there can be, if they still have a uterus versus not having a uterus, there are some that, will withdraw progesterone once or twice a year just to have some bleeding and then restore it. Because if you take progesterone every day, then there won't be a cycle. But, and the last thing I would say is because it's commonplace, hopefully less now than it used to be, but I still see it. If you're postmenopausal and a doctor gives you a prescription for PremPro, which is synthetic estrogen and progestin, you should not only throw it away, but you should run and go find somebody else,
Hmm.
because it's, all of the studies that were done on the World Health Initiative back in 2001 were on synthetic hormones. It's a terrible combination, and it is not protective, and it's just the wrong way to go. And unfortunately, not everyone knows that.
Is that where the misconception has come? Bioidentical hormones potentially being cancerous? Is it actually related to what you're talking about?
Well, yeah, because they confuse estrogen. Oh, it's all estrogen. No, it isn't. Estrogen is synthetic. Estradiol is the natural hormone you made your whole life.
Yeah.
And there are numerous studies now, because I still see it. There are numerous studies that show that estradiol is breast protective, and so is progesterone. And because I swear more than once a month, someone says, well, my friend said, or my doctor said that this would cause me to have breast cancer. And I say the same thing. Here's the literature. You read it. You decide, because and why the conventional medical societies have not embraced that, I don't know. Do they really not care to reduce the risk of heart attack and stroke for their female patients, to have them live longer, to reduce their risk of breast cancer? It's mind boggling, but
Yeah.
the research is there, and it is safe.
Yeah. 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 Good to know. Yeah. I had to talk to my mom about that because I got her onto hormones and she had to talk to her doctor about it because that was her understanding. I was like, oh, no, I can't go on hormones. It's going to cause cancer. And I was like, no, mom.
Well, unfortunately, there are many physicians that still think that. And I had one here in Aspen last month that saw a new OB-GYN at the group here in town that was recently trained, because most of the new trainees are starting to understand what I'm talking about, or they've seen the literature, they've heard it somewhere. It's ones that maybe aren't up on the latest, but not the case. And this person said, you have to stop taking that or you're going to have cancer. And I said, well, I'll check mark, make sure I don't send anybody over there again.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it. I'm like, wow, they're brand new, huh? Oh yeah. Yeah. Just graduated from wherever, Harvard, Yale, I don't know, someplace. And I'm like, that's
Dang.
astounding. Yep.
Yeah. 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 That's pretty problematic. I mean, there's a lot of issues going on there with medical education in general is not where it should be. But It's great that we have people like you who are changing the tide. I want to dive into PRP a little bit here, platelet-rich plasma. I've done PRP a bunch on my face, like the facials. It's been wonderful. I had like acne scars, it healed, and it's been pretty incredible. What is your experience with this? And is it mostly topical that you're using it, or are there other ways that you're using it as well?
Well, I've been using, as a sports medicine physician, I've been using PRP for 20 years, and injecting ankles,
Yeah.
knees, hips, whatever. But we do with aesthetics a lot. I've used it for hair growth. And so, you have in your blood, let's just say a dozen, a little more than that, but a dozen great growth factors. And when we apply them topically, microneedle it, in a combination, usually it's some subcutaneous injection and microneedling, even. So there's a number of devices besides handheld microneedling, but it stimulates collagen formation. It puts growth factors back in the skin that, maybe the circulation just isn't carrying everything there that needs to be, particularly in the cases of people with some scarring or acne issues.
Yeah.
So I like it a lot. I use it for hair growth. What I like even more is exosome products. I use Juvexo's products. They're out of the Miami area, and it's umbilical cord derived growth factors, over 300 proteins, growth factors. That does everything to stimulate. I call it PRP on steroids. Not that I want to add steroids to it. It's a joke. But it tremendous results with stimulating and really making a more youthful appearance. I have some of the before and after photos on my website for scalp injections. Hair growth were mine after, one exosome injection or series of injections. At 6 months to a year, it was still much better. And so, they when we could take all those growth factors from perinatal tissue, if you think about it, from when you were a newborn, you haven't had them in a long time, and put them directly where we want them. That's why those kind of things and stem cells work so well for orthopedic applications, sports medicine, knees, hip, shoulders, rotator cuffs, labral tears, cartilage tears, because they heal. And when we put it directly there, if they could get there in the first place via the bloodstream, then we'd regrow tissue like a chameleon. Well, it doesn't work that way. So we place it where we want it. We usually see extremely good results.
Yeah. Have you heard of people using PRP vaginally for fertility?
Not for fertility, for sensitivity, the O shot and P shot for men, penis, which most men would cringe there, but I can tell you they're really in the shaft of the penis. There's not many pain fibers. And so it's actually a pretty simple injection technique, but the same around the introitus, around the opening to the vagina, and that it can stimulate and grow, improve blood flow and sensitivity. I have not heard of it for fertility.
Oh, interesting. Is the O shot, is it PRP? Is it like plasma? It is. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, but you have to go to somebody obviously to do that for you.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because I haven't done it, so I was just curious about it. Yeah, I'm just starting to hear about PRP in more applications, which is really cool, and especially if people are struggling for fertility or maybe something like PCOS or even endometriosis. I wonder how the plasma could really help support the tissue down there.
Well, that's a whole nother can of worms.
Yeah.
And PCOS is mistreated. We see progesterone importance. Thyroid is a big role in PCOS that's always overlooked. Endometriosis, I've had a number of women over the years that progesterone has helped significantly with that. And so They're all kind of interrelated, but I have not heard of using PRP for those conditions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And what about peptides? I feel like peptides are such a buzzword right now. I'm curious how you use them in your practice, especially for women.
Well, I use peptides a lot for everyone. It's kind of funny. I get calls all the time and someone say, "Hey, I want to do peptides." And I'll say, "Great. Which one? Me, which one?"
Yeah.
I don't know. I just want to take a peptide. I'm like, well, insulin's a peptide. Do you need insulin? So they have very specific action. So we use peptides. I like tesamorelin, ipamerelin. Some use sermorelin for stimulating growth hormone. But again, you have to test and see, do I need it? You don't just take it to increase growth hormone. If your growth hormone levels are already 180 or 200, why would you want to take more? If they're low, then certain. We use peptides for inflammation. They all have crazy names. BPC
Yeah.
1.7
Yeah.
is great for inflammation, post workout, inflammatory bowel disease. I mean, there's a lot of things that particular peptide is very helpful for. You don't have to be sick, but if you work out hard and you want to improve recovery time, then that could be utilized. There are TB 500, for instance. There is another weird name of one that we use to stimulate immune function. So there's just a number of different peptides, and we really have to kind of
Mm-hmm.
match what we're wanting to accomplish. We don't just take them all.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. 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 And it's also pretty complicated. Like, I find there's a lot of education required around peptides. Because I'm assuming you give people the actual peptides and the injections to do at home versus like them always coming into your clinic, or is it
No,
both?
no, I prescribe it for self use. There are some that can be done by nasal spray. The most effective is sub-Q injection,
Yeah.
and then by protocol. I just wrote some for someone today of NAD. It's not a peptide, but it's let's
Yeah.
just similar. Instead of taking one of the oral supplements that don't absorb real well, she'll do 25 units sub Q Monday, Wednesday, Friday for a couple of weeks, and then increase as needed to really help restore energy levels. And so
Yeah.
there's a number of fun tricks that we can utilize
Yeah.
to help someone really, feel their best.
Yeah. I actually didn't know you could take NAD as a peptide. Like, or is it a precursor?
No, it's NAD. Take it as a sub Q injection.
Okay.
It's not a peptide, but yes, you can take it
Yes.
like
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I've also heard that and I don't actually, I've never done it. An NAD IV is actually not the most effective way to actually increase your levels.
Well, I would have issue with that. I mean, there's no better than an IV to increase your level. It's short lived. I have people that do NAD infusions all the time. It takes
Right.
2 to 4 hours to do one because
Yeah.
if you give it too rapidly, it's not much fun. You can have
Mm,
rush and it's unpleasant. We use a supplement called TMG, trimethylglycine, which is kind of a beet extract. Prior to treatment, and then it makes it much easier to tolerate an NAD infusion.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, I feel like NAD is such a trendy thing as well. Like the amount of supplements I see that claim to boost NAD levels is just wild now. But I'm sure you see this as well. Like the whole longevity space in general seems to be so like everyone is fleeing to it and so interested in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and as we should, why would we not try to do everything possible to feel our best and
Yeah.
stick around a little longer?
Yeah. Yeah. What do you find the most common misconceptions are about aging from the people who kind of come into your clinic?
Wow, that's a good one. I think that there are a number that just think it's a one shot fixes everything. Well,
Mm,
it's not, and that taking hormones, doing my injections, getting testosterone pellets, doing whatever is all I need to do. Well, it isn't. You have to change your lifestyle. You have to change what you put in your mouth. You have to research what you put in your mouth, you
Yeah.
know, and so, it's very important that I just tell people, I said, you need to make this a study, have fun, start learning more things that you can do for yourself to make a better version of you.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have people who come in who have been sober for, a while, let's say 5, 10 years or more? I'm so curious if you can see by just looking at their biomarkers a difference in people who are sober versus people who aren't.
Well, definitely, I think there are a number of factors from uh, testosterone decline to liver function to certainly if we're looking at DNA methylation, biologic age testing, or the one I like a lot called the glycan age. So reducing the amount of glycoproteins, that one just from starting hormone therapy alone, wow, you can add 10 to 20 years to your lifespan and shorten your biologic age just from having less glycation
Yeah.
and using natural hormones. So the micronutrient changes because when we're drinking a lot, most of what we take are water soluble vitamins, and so they're flushed out, and we tend to be more vitamin deficient.
Yeah.
That alone is a great decision, and I commend anyone who's
Yeah.
made that decision and cleaned themselves from either all or most forms of alcohol.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've been sober for 600 days. And the only reason I know that, or it's like 602 now, I guess, is I have an app and it just like, adds it. And I don't plan on going back to alcohol. Like I just don't, I'm not interested in it. And I know that every generation actually drinks less than the generation before. So millennials and Gen Z, I think, are drinking about 20 to 30% less than their parents or the generation before. So I'm just so curious as that age group kind of gets older, what our biomarkers and everything might look like. But I think there might be an increase in other substances like cannabis and psilocybin. So yeah, it's just interesting.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I think like long term, I'm like 30 years from now, if I'm still sober, I think I'm going to be really happy with my minerals and all of these things that I'll get tested. So I think it's kind of worth it, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. This was amazing to talk to you. If people want to connect with you and they want to order your book and learn more about the work that you do or maybe come to your clinic, where can they do that?
So you can go to aspen-regenerativemedicine.com, look at our website. We have a week-long anti-aging makeover program I call Ultimate Aspen Experience, and you can read all about that. You can go on Amazon and find a copy of Beyond the Fountain of Youth. It's now, as of last week, on Spotify if you prefer to listen in the car.
Cool.
And my podcast of the same name is on YouTube and Apple TV and wherever else you get your podcasts. Just put in Beyond the Fountain of Youth podcast. And yeah, I love talking to people, and we can I treat people all over the world by telemedicine. And so we can easily send orders to get some blood work done and talk and tell you if you're a candidate for something or not. And
Yeah.
the interest is there. And as the time marches on, as I say, no one is immune to the effects of age.
Yes.
I haven't met one yet.
Yes. Very true. Very true. Although we wish we were. We are not. Yeah, I see that. Well, thank you so much. I will link all of that in the show notes and on my website so everyone can find you easily. Thank you for coming on the show. This was awesome. And maybe I will come to your clinic one day and try some of the different things that you offer.
Well, we would love to see you, and I really appreciate your time.
Thank you for listening to Biohacking with Brittany, where women optimize. If you loved this episode, share it, subscribe, and leave a review to help more women step into science-backed, soul-led wellness. To go deeper, check out the show notes for upcoming retreats, live events, my course, and the latest on socials. Until next time, keep listening to your body, trusting your intuition, and optimizing every step of the way.